My name is Libby Carr, and I'm the campaign manager for WAMEND. How many of you have heard of WAMEND? Let me see. Well, I'm speaking to a friendly audience. This is good. How many of you are already carrying petitions for this cause? Okay, great. We thank you very much for that. What I'd like to do tonight is this is going to be a workshop within a workshop, in a way. I think we've advertised it on our wamend.org website, which all of you should be sure and pay several visits to, that this is a training session so people can learn to present this workshop. But I'm going to start out by doing the public part of the workshop. And those of you who want to be trainers, this is basically what you'll be doing. We'll have some introductory remarks here, and then we will watch two very short video clips, and then we'll have Sil come up and do a Q&A. This is Sil. I want to introduce Sil Pierce. If you can stand up and turn around. She's one of two area team leaders in this part of Seattle for gathering the signatures. And the other gentleman next to her, if you'll stand up and turn around, this is Jay Heyman, who is our coordinator of WAMEND and has been our fearless leader since the beginning of this effort. We owe much to both of them for getting us thus far. So some of you may have come because you want to learn to deliver this workshop and get a kit. I have kits over here. These are in the red folders, and we're asking a $10 donation. And in it is a DVD with 4 selections on it, 3 of which we'll be playing tonight. The last one being on signature gathering tips. And the first one is a 57-minute great DV clip done by a young woman named Ashley Sanders from the national team of Move to Amend. And it's her speech condensed from 90 minutes down to 57 minutes, so it could be shown on public television in a meeting that was done upstairs the end of last September. And what it shows is how this subject of overturning Citizens United is in fact a social movement that's sweeping the country. And it's been building for a number of years now, and it's really picking up momentum. And in Ashley's remarks, which is really a brilliant use of timelines, where her first timeline is showing the historical evolution, or devolution if you will, of the Supreme Court decisions and also federal court decisions where corporations started in the mid-1800s with Santa Clara County versus the railroad, and over time have gotten more and more pieces of personhood until finally Citizens United gave them unfettered free speech in the form of, well, if you're a person, you must have a need to speak, so that must be your money. We'll let you give to the super PACs, no restrictions, no disclosure, and that is what we are here fighting today. So, how many of you came to get a kit tonight? Okay, if you would like to come and pick one up, and I'll collect your donation afterwards, but at some point during my remarks, I'll be referring to the contents of the kit. And also, well, you can hold on for a minute because more people towards the end of my remarks may want a kit at that time, so we'll take care of that a little bit later. So, what I want to say is that I know that this issue of overturning Citizens United is very important to a lot of people. when I first started working with WAMEND as a volunteer back in March, we were growing the grassroots organization, and Jay and I think it was the first time that I went out with Jay and we were at Folklife gathering signatures and names of people to be on our sign-up sheet and to build an organization. And the very first person I approached was a woman about my age, and she was sitting on that round, circular, huge bench around the International Fountain. And I said, here, how would you like to, sign your name on our sign-up sheet for WAMEND? And we're a grassroots organization who are going to be doing a citizens initiative to overturn Citizens United and to urge our congresspeople to go for that. And she starts laughing at me, and she says, "Are you nuts? Why are you wasting your time? Surely you don't believe that this is going to make a difference or that this is possible." And I guess I was so taken aback by how forthright she was, I sat down and I really had to think about this for a minute. And I thought about it, and I said, well, I'm really glad you asked me that question, because I haven't asked myself that question. Why am I doing this? Because I know it's going to take a lot of my time, and I've got other things I could be doing. But then I thought about it, and the best reason I could think of are my grandchildren. That it's all about what kind of a democracy are we going to be leaving when it's time for us to leave. So I told her that answer, and she thought about it for a moment, and then she took my clipboard and signed up. So that's what I think we all need to think about, and that what we are all here for is to make a statement that we need to take a stand, that we all know that something's terribly rotten in Denmark and in the United States, and that we are losing this day by day. But I do believe it's possible to get it back. So what I want to do first is show Annie Leonard's DVD that she did on, it's called The Story of Citizens United, and I think it was the second one that she did after The Story of Stuff. So we'll talk about that in a minute. The reason I like this is because in 8 minutes, so if you're going to be a trainer on this, in 8 minutes you can take an audience who virtually knows nothing about Citizens United and its significance, and in 8 minutes you know what they know, and they know quite a bit about what's the problem here.
In season 1 of The Story of Stuff, we looked at a system that creates way too much stuff and way too little of what we really want. Now we're going to start looking at the stories behind the story of stuff. That's where we'll find ways to turn this situation around. Welcome to season 2.
Bad for you, bad for America.
He'll put us back on track.
Hester ran our state into the ground. Now he wants to be your senator.
Stand up. Say no.
Stand up and say no.
Bad for you, bad for America.
Vote for this guy.
Vote for this guy.
Aren't you tired of this stuff? Why is it that every election season it becomes impossible to hear the facts over all these misleading ads? And if it seems the problem is only getting worse, that's because it is. We can thank the Supreme Court for that. In 2010, they decided that it would be just fine for corporations to spend as much money as they want telling us who to vote for. Wait, why are corporations telling us who to vote for? Let's get something straight. This is a democracy, rule by the people. I'm a person, you're a person, and Chevron, not a person. So shouldn't elections be all about what people want? Good jobs, safe products, health care, responsible government, clean air and water. It turns out the vast majority of Americans want to see a lot more done on all of these things. But what people want is going to take a back seat as long as corporations can spend millions getting lawmakers elected. Oil companies have gotten politicians to block laws protecting our climate. Manufacturers have pushed through trade agreements that gut product safety and help ship jobs overseas. Insurance companies have been the first ones consulted on health reform, and giant corporations have gotten bailouts and subsidies. Maybe that's why all kinds of people, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, are totally frustrated with our government.
It's the government!
It's easy to get angry, but it's time we got smart and realized that the heart of our problem is not that we have bad lawmakers. We have a democracy in crisis. 85% of Americans feel that corporations have too much power in our democracy and people have too little. 85%. Hey, that's a majority. So let's get together and take our democracy back from the corporations. It's the first and most important step in making real progress on all the issues that people care most about. So how did we, the people, lose control of our democracy to begin with? Let's go back a few centuries. Back then, there were just people. Some of them owned businesses, some of them worked for businesses. Still, there were just people. Then people invented something entirely new, the corporation. These legal entities exist independently of the people who own them. If a corporation does something that gets it into trouble, the owners can say, "Don't blame me, blame the corporation. I'm just a shareholder." When the United States came into existence, corporations were easier to keep in check. Back then, the government would grant them charters for a specific short-term project, like building a bridge or a railroad. Once they fulfilled their purpose, they were disbanded. But over time, the law changed, and corporations no longer had to be turned off once their project was complete. They began to live on indefinitely, with a much more general purpose: profit. And that's how the modern corporation was born. Today's corporations have evolved to have something very dangerous in their programming. Unlike people who are driven by all kinds of motivations, doing the right thing, love for family, their country, the planet, publicly traded corporations are now required by law and the markets to pursue one single motivation above all others: maximize value for shareholders. Make as much money as possible. That's it. No, really, that's what the law and the markets demand. Imagine a friend saying, "The only thing I care about is money." It's not someone you'd want to leave your kids with, or your democracy for that matter. Yes, it is people who run these corporations, but their human motivations come second. If they prioritize anything at all over maximizing profits, they're out of there. Can corporate leaders do good things like give to charity or try to be more green? Sure, but not if it conflicts with maximum profits. And since their humble beginnings, corporations have grown huge. 53 of the 100 biggest economies on Earth now are corporations. So corporations have a single-minded profit motive, they're humongous, and their owners can easily dodge the blame for any harm they cause. That makes them tricky to share a country with. If we want them to serve us and not the other way around, they need some basic ground rules. And that's where the government comes in, setting rules to keep things fair and safe and to protect society from corporations run amok. Now, if their main objective is to maximize profit, do you think corporations are content to follow the rules that keep them in check? No, of course not. They want to write those rules. But who is supposed to write the rules in a democracy? People. That's why one of the corporation's key strategies for sneaking into our democracy is saying that they should have the same First Amendment rights as real live people. And that's exactly how they won the 2010 Supreme Court case known as Citizens United versus FEC. In that case, 5 members of the Supreme Court decided that it's unconstitutional to put any limits on how much money corporations can spend influencing elections. Why? They said these limits violate the First Amendment guaranteeing free speech. Now, obviously, our founding fathers who wrote the First Amendment were trying to protect the free speech of people. But this decision rides on the crazy argument that corporations should be treated the same as people and get the same rights that real people get. This means corporations can spend as much as they want, whenever they want, to intimidate or crush candidates running on a platform against their interests and support candidates who will do what they ask. It's great news for corporations wanting to handpick the lawmakers whose job it is to keep them in check. Now, I am all for free speech. If every shareholder and employee at Exxon wants to personally support some oil lobbyist running for Senate, that's their right. There are millions more people who will support a different candidate. That's democracy in action. But now, Exxon or any other corporation can decide to spend unlimited dollars from its huge corporate coffers to influence an election without even consulting its shareholders. This is a big deal. If the top 100 corporations decided to throw in just 1% of their profits, they could outspend every candidate for president, House, and Senate combined. Good luck having your free speech heard over that. So did opening the floodgates on this money actually cause a flood? Sure did. In 2010, the kind of independent groups that corporations are now allowed to support spent $300 million. That's more than every midterm election since 1990 combined. So corporations are drowning out our voices, getting what they want, and our democracy is in trouble. But we can totally save it. People are so outraged by the Supreme Court decision that a massive response is mobilizing. Such a huge problem requires a huge solution, and we've got one. A new constitutional amendment. The amendment is smart and clear. It reverses this disaster to our democracy by clarifying that the First Amendment isn't meant for for-profit corporations. I get that amending the Constitution is a big, ambitious goal, but it's not impossible. Every time huge positive change has been made in this country, it's because people dreamed big, aimed high, and set ambitious goals. It's time to do that now, because the life of our democracy is on the line. Public financing of campaigns would be another huge step forward. Congress is working on a bill right now that would make it possible for candidates to get elected without corporate dollars. Remember, 85% of Americans think that corporations have too much influence in our democracy. That's enough to make change if we can turn that sentiment into action. Look, the corporations won't get out of our democracy until we, the people, get back in. So keep fighting for renewable energy, green jobs, healthcare, safe products, and top-notch public education. But save some energy for the battle of our lifetimes. A battle that can open the door to solving all of these things. It's time to put corporations back in their place and to put the people back in charge of our democracy.
So I like to say I designed this workshop because a lot of people need to be out there, letting people know what Citizens United is all about. As we saw from the 522 campaign, it's one thing to get an initiative on the ballot with enough signatures, and it's another thing to make sure it passes. And we want to get both on the ballot, and we want this thing to pass. So what we knew early on was that we had to both educate people on how to gather signatures, but we also had to give them an opportunity to really learn about this issue so when people asked them questions, they could feel comfortable answering it. So with that being the challenge, I said, well, how are we going to train up a couple of thousand, accomplished public speakers? Well, I'm not sure. So the idea that came to us was to use the Annie Leonard and let her give the speech. So that's what we're doing with these 2 DVDs. And so this first one, I think, does an excellent job of describing very quickly what is Citizens United. But it goes beyond that. It also gives, in my opinion, an overview of what is the state of our current democracy currently, and what is at stake. So, does that make sense? Yes. Okay. Now what I want to do is show the second one, which is Wealth Inequality in America, and then I'll tie the two together for you.
There's a chart I saw recently that I can't get out of my head. A Harvard business professor and economist asked more than 5,000 Americans how they thought wealth was distributed in the United States. This is what they said they thought it was. Dividing the country into 5 rough groups of the top, bottom, and middle 3 20% groups, they asked people how they thought the wealth in this country was divided. Then he asked them what they thought was the ideal distribution. And 92%, that's at least 9 out of 10 of them, said it should be more like this. In other words, more equitable than they think it is. Now that fact is telling, admittedly, the notion that most Americans know that the system is already skewed unfairly. But what's most interesting to me is the reality compared to our perception. The ideal is as far removed from our perception of reality as the actual distribution is from what we think exists in this country. So ignore the ideal for a moment. Here's what we think it is again. And here is the actual distribution. Shockingly skewed. Not only do the bottom 20% and the next 20%, the bottom 40% of Americans barely have any of the wealth. I mean, it's hard to even see them on the chart. But the top 1% has more of the country's wealth than 9 out of 10 Americans believe the entire top 20% should have. Mind-blowing. But let's look at it another way, because I find this chart kind of difficult to wrap my head around. Instead, let's reduce the 311 million Americans to just a representative 100 people. Make it simple. Here they are: teachers, coaches, firefighters, construction workers, engineers, doctors, lawyers, some investment bankers, a CEO, maybe a celebrity or two. Now let's line them up according to their wealth. Poorest people on the left, wealthiest on the right, just a steady row of folks based on their net worth. We'll color code them like we did before based on which 20% quintile they fall into. Now let's reduce the total wealth of the United States, which was roughly $54 trillion in 2009, to this symbolic pile of cash. And let's distribute it among our 100 Americans. Well, here's socialism, all the wealth of the country distributed equally. We all know that won't work. We need to encourage people to work and work hard to achieve that good old American dream and keep our country moving forward. So, here's that ideal we asked everyone about. Something like this curve. This isn't too bad. We've got some incentive, as the wealthiest folks are now about 10 to 20 times better off than the poorest Americans. But hey, even the poor folks aren't actually poor, since the poverty line has stayed almost entirely off the chart. We have a super healthy middle class with a smooth transition into wealth. And yes, Republicans and Democrats alike chose this curve. 9 out of 10 people, 92%, said this was a nice, ideal distribution of America's wealth. But let's move on. This is what people think America's wealth distribution actually looks like. Not as equitable, clearly, but for me, even this still looks pretty great. Yes, the poorest 20 to 30% are starting to suffer quite a lot compared to the ideal, and the middle class is certainly struggling more than they were, while the rich and wealthy are making roughly 100 times that of the poorest Americans, and about 10 times that of the still healthy middle class. Sadly, this isn't even close to the reality. Here is the actual distribution of wealth in America. The poorest Americans don't even register. They're down to pocket change, and the middle class is barely distinguishable from the poor. In fact, even the rich between the top 10 and 20 percentile are worse off. Only the top 10% are better off. And how much better off? So much better off that the top 2 to 5% are actually off the chart at this scale. And the top 1%, this guy, well, his stack of money stretches 10 times higher than we can show. Here's his stack of cash, restacked, all by itself. This is the top 1% we've been hearing so much about. So much green in his pockets that I have to give him a whole new column of his own, because he won't fit on my chart. 1% of America has 40% of all the nation's wealth. The bottom 80%, 8 out of every 10 people, or 80 out of these 100, only has 7% between them. And this has only gotten worse in the last 20 to 30 years. While the richest 1% take home almost a quarter of the national income today, in 1976, they took home only 9%, meaning their share of income has nearly tripled in the last 30 years. The top 1% own half the country's stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. The bottom 50% of Americans own only 0.5% of these investments, which means they aren't investing. They're just scraping by. I'm sure many of these wealthy people have worked very hard for their money, but do you really believe that the CEO is working 380 times harder than his average employee? Not his lowest paid employee, not the janitor, but the average earner in his company. The average worker needs to work more than a month to earn what the CEO makes in 1 hour. We certainly don't have to go all the way to socialism to find something that is fair for hardworking Americans. We don't even have to achieve what most of us consider might be ideal. All we need to do is wake up and realize that the reality in this country is not at all what we think it is.
How'd this last one make you feel? Were you surprised? Is this any depressed? Others? Angry, right. Were you surprised? Astounded.
And yet
Yeah.
it started under Reagan. I mean, what have people been thinking about this last few years?
Yep.
Bear and the Simpsons.
Piece after piece. Over there on the side? Well, we still get the point, though, that 1% out of 100 is a great imbalance. No wonder there was a movement called Occupy in the 99 going on for a long time. Yes, the reason I chose these two clips to give the speech is because the first one describes our current democracy, and the second one is a generalization, but an accurate, I think, description of our current economic system. And the problem is that the two have become too enmeshed, too intertwined. And that's what we're here to do, is Citizens United, along with a lot of other laws that have been handed down, decisions, policies by Congress, lobbyists, on and on and on, have demonstrated, have made this lack of boundaries become greater and greater, to where our democratic system is now very much controlled by the wealthy elite. And what the movement that's going on right now is a wake-up, is an awakening going on. And our job is to start pulling those two systems apart. And we have to do, one of the only tools that we've got with some teeth in it is to hopefully get a constitutional amendment passed that amends the Constitution, and not a law that Congress passed, which once again the Supreme Court could say it's unconstitutional. So that's what we're doing here tonight, is being a part of that process. As many of you may know, 16 states have already passed resolutions, primarily in their state legislatures, voicing this sentiment that they want their representatives in Congress to introduce a bill that will become a constitutional amendment after it passes Congress by 2/3 of each house, and then it must be ratified by 3/4 of the states, and then it becomes an amendment. This would be the 28th Amendment. Some have gone, one happened very quickly, which was the voting age being lowered from 21 to 18, because we all know that if you're old enough to fight in Vietnam, you certainly should be old enough to vote, right? So that's what we're doing. Here in Washington State, we need to get about 250,000 valid registered voters on these petitions. So we're shooting for at least 300,000 signatures, and they need to be gathered by June 25th. We have a whole army of people out here doing this. And in a few minutes, I'm going to have Sil, your area manager, here come up and talk about that some more, and then watch this last clip on that. But I want to entertain some questions first. Anybody have some questions? Yes. Good question. And I'm going to repeat this for the film, because we are hopefully going to be having this workshop put on our website so people can go there and get training. Do I feel that this is the totality of what we need to reverse this trend? I think it's a major piece. I think another major piece is publicly funded elections, which, as you know, we have worked very hard. A number of people are on the board or have been a part of Washington Public Campaigns, which is a grassroots organization that's been operating in this state for many years now, and have worked with legislators both in Olympia as well as here in Seattle and all over the place to start publicly funding campaigns. So I think that's a big part of it. And I think there's a number of other kinds of things that have been proposed in Congress or people are talking about that could start to separate out these two systems again. Robert Reich's film, Inequality for All, goes into much greater detail, and I confess, he's the guy that I got this idea from, because it was an aha moment for me when I said, oh yeah, I see what he's talking about. We have an economic system and a government democratic process, and the two have become just too close. We have to separate them back out again. And his film demonstrates that beautifully. It's like over and over and over again, hitting you with a hammer. That's what's going on here. And what this workshop is about is an abbreviation, if you will, of that concept. And I find that people can relate to it, and they begin to see what is the problem, and oh yeah, these are supposed to be two systems that operate independently from each other. Yes. I think that, first of all, what our petition calls for is regulation. So, like the gal I met the very first time I was at Signature Gathering to build the organization with Jay at Folklife, I met a young woman who had recently moved here from New Zealand. And she said, oh, you Americans, you're crazy. In New Zealand, everybody knows that it's against the law to donate more than $10,000 to any campaign by anybody or any entity. And of course it has to be disclosed. So personally, I think that if we were to have those two rules in place, that would start, but we have to take away we have to stop the PACs, because that's how this got started. The Public Disclosure Commission, which in this state very closely regulates campaigns like ours, issue campaigns that are initiatives, as well as candidate campaigns, and I think these laws are basically in place all over the country, is you have limits, and you have to disclose how much money is being given directly to a campaign. With Citizens United, it created the Super PAC. So you have this whole other channel that's different than the regulated channel. You have a separate channel of the Super PACs and the accompanying 501c4s, where you can hide some dark money, as it were, to be able to, and that's the avenue with which we have unlimited money flowing. Steve Colbert, as you know, to prove the point, he started his own Super PAC, and we all enjoyed that spectacle quite a bit, and he made a great point. But I don't think that'll be enough. I think the public pressure has to be long-going and loud, and a wake-up call to where we really take back our citizenship. We've become far too complacent and quiet to, and not wanting to be involved in politics or whatever. We're too busy. We're too busy doing this or that. But in the meantime, we're losing our democracy. That started with a Powell memo a number of decades ago of an attorney who used to work for the R.J. Reynolds Tobacco Company and slid over to the Supreme Court and was asked to write a memo on what should the Republican Party do for really getting ahead. And he was a pretty brilliant writer, and he put out a playbook. And they've been following that very closely. Well, it's piece by piece. They've taken over, like the whole issue of lobbyists, of not having any downtime between being in public office and the next day going to work for, as a lobbyist, you fill in the blank. We have lots of those examples. Or the other way around, being a lobbyist and now we can go run for office without, any downtime or any restrictions on being in those roles. So I think there's a number of ideas and regulations and laws that should be put into place to separate out these two systems. Yes? There's 16 states, yeah. 14 were done by state legislatures by resolution, and 2 were referenda from the legislatures that got on the general election ballots and were passed by the populations. That's how it developed in that particular state, right. So for example, in this state, the people who were the predecessors to WAMEND actually forming tried for 4 years in the state legislature to get a resolution through the state legislature, but never got both houses to agree. The last 2 years it passed the House, and it didn't get out of Pam Roach's Senate committee on government relations because she didn't want it to leave her committee. She wanted it to die there, so it did. And so after 4 attempts to get it through the state legislature for a resolution, we finally said, no, we've got to do it ourselves, and hence a citizens' initiative. And this is significant because not very many states, and in fact I don't think any states at this point in time, have done a complete citizens' initiative where you have to, in this state, you have to get 8% of the last gubernatorial election of the number of voters who voted for the last governor. So that translates into approximately 248,000. So a lot of states, John Nichols was here a number of months ago with Robert McChesney when they were promoting their book, Dollarocracy. And he said a lot of states are watching the state of Washington, because if you can pull off a citizens' initiative that everybody knows, and especially politicians know, that, the American people are finally speaking. And it's not just some euphemism that they're uttering back in D.C. Yes, Josh. Well, first of all, we haven't seen our opponents yet. And on several weeks ago, we were talking with Ben, well, you all know Ben Cohen of Ben & Jerry ice cream fame. He's coming out here. He wants to support this initiative, and he's driving his van out here as someone on his staff is driving it across the Stampede Mobile, where he stamps the money, the currency, not to be used for bribing politicians and other great sayings. So he's coming out, and I was talking with his one of his political advisors who works for a public relations firm that in Washington, D.C., and Edward was saying that he didn't think that we would have much opposition, unlike the 522 campaign. And that's because the 522 campaign, the no GMOs, the food labeling, was directly attacking a specific industry. So those corporate interests were very clearly identified, and their self-interest was very clear there. But he's thinking that we probably don't have to raise a lot of money for campaign ads to counter a direct attack. We should use more for social media. And his thinking, I think, was that this is more of a motherhood and apple pie. Who would be against your democracy? Who could say, well, my vote's really more important than yours? Or how would they spin it? I think it's just harder to spin. I don't know if I'm getting at your question, but who knows? We haven't been there yet, and we'll have to see what happens. First, we have to get on the ballot. That's right, so. Yes. No, a great question in terms of how the big picture on this process. What I can tell you is that no amendment to the Constitution, and in fact, few laws, but especially amendments, have been passed without great, prolonged public pressure. In fact, one could say near revolution. The Civil Rights Act, a lot of blood was shed before anything changed and before amendments happened. And it's not going to happen from one or two states. It's going to happen because it's a social movement sweeping the country for many years. The only thing that this vote will do in our election in November is it technically can only urge our congressional representatives to bring a bill to do this in Congress, which is why we have to do this state after state. We have to prove to Congress, without a doubt, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that people across the country believe that we are losing our voices, that corporate power, that it's becoming an oligarchy, and that is wrong. So when I first started working on this, I wanted to work on this really hard and be done with it. You know, I like to solve problems and then go on with my life. I'm sorry, it doesn't work that way. It's not going to work that way. It's about consciousness raising. It's about waking up and taking back our citizenship. It's about talking to other people and all across the country and deciding that my vote really matters and I've got to stand up for it or I'm not going to be living in a democracy. So it's a process. When John Nichols was here, we were talking with him after his talk at Town Hall, and we said, well, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? And he said, what's going to happen, I can't predict. All I know is that if we're building enough public pressure and a public statement that beyond a shadow of a doubt, and everybody knows what the American people want, and that they want their democracy back, and they don't think that they've got it now. Their representatives are not representing them. Their representatives are representing who bought their last election. And beyond a shadow of a doubt, we have to prove that we know what's up, that we know that that's the gig and it's up. Yeah. Well said. Well said. I applaud you for that. I want to repeat that for the film, and that is that we've got to show our kids, we've got to demonstrate, not tell them, not lecture to them. We've got to demonstrate that we are still citizens and that we are involved in this campaign and in every other campaign, that we vote, that we don't sit back and complain, that we get out there and work for our democracy, or else it won't be there. Yes, but we can't rest on our laurels at all. Right, right. I really commend to you the first cut on this DVD is the speech by Ashley Sanders and the timelines that give this perspective that you're talking about. She starts back pre-Revolutionary War. She starts back in England and Europe and the development of what became the corporation. So, but you're right, and it's the long arc of history. Back there. Right. Jay, you want to come and talk about that? Or you want me to? Yeah, I'll let Jay answer that question.
2 weeks ago, Wednesday night, I picked up 10 boxes of, how many in each box? 25,000 petitions. And within 3 days, I think they had been distributed throughout the entire state. So we have got a team of people. Unfortunately, we don't have enough of a team of people, but we have got a handful of people in almost every community throughout the state. What we need are people like you who are really angry about this and are willing to spend time and get involved. And more than just carrying petitions, we really need you out there looking for more people to do the same thing. It's going to take, I think we need 3,000 people who have committed themselves to getting 100 apiece, 100 signatures. That's 5 sheets of these petitions. And at the moment, we have in our database 2,500 people that we've gathered in the last 8 or 9 months. But not all of them were excited at one time. But you know how this works. It's like a revolving door. Somebody's excited one day, and I think our database shows here in central Seattle something like 700 people who have volunteered to help. But when we put out a call last week for all of those people to come to a meeting, we're lucky to get 3 or 4. So we have got a huge undertaking, and the best thing you can do is go out, take one of our sign-up sheets, and take that around and get people to commit to filling up one entire petition or 2 sets and mail them back in to us. So be a gatherer of gatherers is probably the best thing you can do. But we're definitely making progress. We've got until the middle of June. There's some interesting events coming up, and we're growing. We're kind of behind the 8 ball. We got off to a slow start because this is really we did this about 4.5 years ago. A handful of us, 10 of us or so, got together to start talking about what we could do. And over time, we realized that, well, maybe the only thing, or one of the only things, or maybe the place to start, striking at the root, to use Lawrence Lessig's terminology, maybe what we need to do is go after the constitutional amendment to get corporations and their money out of politics. That would certainly, there are other things going on. There's the Anti-Corruption Act sponsored by Represent Us, which is terrific. And all of it, when McChesney and Nichols were here at Town Hall and at UW a few months back, they talked about this wave of populism that is spreading throughout the country, and it is going like wildfire. And just watching the news and listening to things for the last couple of weeks, I've noticed that. Have you noticed that all of a sudden the right wing is starting to talk about how much they hate us, how much they're talking about taking away our money, and how nervous the super rich have all of a sudden gotten. There was this guy, Pickens or Perkins or whatever his name was, talking about how the mega rich are being persecuted in this country, and it's drawing analogies to Nazi Germany. So there is definitely something in the wind. So there is hope, and I say let's jump at the opportunity. We have team leaders in each of our 13 areas. We've divided the state up into 13 geographic zones, and each one has got 1 or 2 or 3 points of contact. And those are all listed on the WAMEND website. If you go to the website, and over in the right-hand corner, it'll say how to get petitions, and one is download it and take it to a printer and get it don't reduce it to 8.5 by 11 paper. It'll be thrown away. One of our people was seen on the streets the other day, and he said, "Oh yeah, it was too big. It wouldn't fit on my board, so I took it and had it reduced in size." And he had totally wasted 20 signatures, and he fortunately knew who they were, so he could go back and fill them up. It's got to be double-sided, printed exactly the way it looks on the website, but you can download a copy, take it to a print shop, and have them printed on 11 by 17 paper. The next line down on the website says, find your team leader. Click on that. It'll take you to a chart, or not necessarily, a chart, and will tell you what municipalities and what zip codes are in which area, and then you can actually click on one. Syl's name is on there, and you can write her and say, where do I pick up petitions? We're trying to find places around the states where one of our representatives will be, like every Saturday afternoon from 1 to 3. And you can go there and you can drop off your petitions and you can pick up new ones at the same time. So we're working on that. It's a little more difficult on the other side of the mountains to find places, but we're thinking of using Starbucks and places like that as our temporary offices. Yeah, we'll have some, there are a bunch of them right here. And so if any of you want to get involved in a bigger way than just being a gatherer of gatherers, if you want to help and work with the team leaders, we need people in management positions. We need people that do data entry. This is a citizen-based, it's a good thing it's citizen-based because I don't think there's a corporation out there who's going to support us. Maybe small mom and pop businesses, and we have received some endorsements from the small businesses around the state. But the corporate, this is never going to be in the newspaper. You're never going to see this on television because they know what we're talking about. And it is not in their interests to let anybody know that we're out there doing this. This is a truly citizen-based operation. If we're ever going to take and recreate a democratic state, it ain't going to be through the help of the corporations. So who's going to fight us? Well, if we get ourselves on the ballot, I suspect that the U.S. Chamber of Commerce will get involved in doing some advertising and spend some money to overcome it. Thank you. It's nice to see all of you, and let's go.
Thanks, Jay. Syl, do you want to? Yeah. This is Syl Pierce, and she wants to show the next DVD clip. So why don't you come up and introduce yourself?
Hi there, everybody. I love coming to the Common Good Cafe because we have these great conversations, and really that's what this whole movement is about, is having this conversation that we've had together tonight with lots of your friends and neighbors, and just spread the word so the movement can keep growing. And I just wanted to underscore one thing in Annie Leonard's DVD where she was talking about how in 2010 the expenditures out of those super PACs was $300 million, and that was as much as had been spent.
We have 8 days left to get 300.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Since 1990, so that was 20 years. So, and then it's been even worse since 2010. I know that you all know that, but that's why we're doing this, because we want to get our democracy back. And I also just wanted to underscore what Jay was talking about, is we need all sorts of help. We've got lots of events. We've got the University Farmers Market, the Ballard Farmers Market, if you happen to have come from over there, and the Fremont Farmers Market. The Ballard and Fremont are on Sundays, and the University's on Saturday. We'll be out here for the University Street Fair. We have May 3rd, opening day. There'll be thousands of people down there, and we need signature gatherers, as well as, we've got folk life and that type of thing, but especially because many of you might be here March 16th to hear John Deere upstairs, right? So if you plan on being here, please let me know, and would love to provide you with some petitions. And when Elizabeth Warren is here, May 29th, because I bet a lot of you will be here. So please help us out on those days. And if you would like to organize an event or be responsible for your neighborhood area, just let me know and we'll be happy to talk to you. This next DVD is about a petition, an initiative that was in our state a couple of years ago. So we're really showing it for purposes of it has some really helpful hints about how to gather signatures. So don't get bogged down in the details of what he's talking about for that initiative, because it doesn't relate at all to Initiative 1329.
My name's Eric, and I'm an organizer with the Yes on 1098 campaign. A lot of people have been asking us for the best tips and best practices as far as signature gathering goes. So I thought we'd put together this quick little YouTube video and give you some good ideas on how to be an effective signature gatherer. We have 8 days left to get 325,000 signatures by June 25th. So that means we're going to need your help to gather signatures. There's 2 basic ways to gather signatures. The first way is a one-on-one interaction with people. It's very effective, lots of fun. The second way is using a table to talk to large crowds. So we'll go over some tips and tricks for both styles of. The first major tip is to be big and to be friendly. So you want to give a nice big wave to people as they're approaching you on the street. The second thing you want to do is make sure you smile. No one's going to stop and talk to you if it doesn't look like you're having a good time. The third thing you should do is say, hey, are you a Washington voter? This is kind of a loaded question. It's basically asking people, are you a civically engaged citizen? Do you sign initiatives? Do you participate in the democratic process? If they say no, they're not a Washington voter, say, I'll leave you alone, have a nice day. It's a great way to get people who are going to sign to come over and talk to you. Hi, are you a Washington voter?
Hi, yes.
Great, come and talk to me. Second major tip is to get the clipboard in the person's hand as soon as possible. So when that person says yes, they're a Washington voter, you hand over that clipboard immediately and get the pen into their hand. Once the clipboard is in someone's hand, they are way more likely to sign this initiative. If someone needs a little more convincing, you just say, hey, help us fund education and healthcare by taxing the super wealthy. And that should get pretty much everyone who's going to sign an initiative to sign this initiative. Hi, are you a Washington voter?
Yes, I am.
Excellent. Well, take a look at this. My name's Eric, and I'm with the Yes on 1098 campaign. We're out here gathering signatures to support education and healthcare by taxing the super wealthy. So you should sign this initiative.
Okay.
So the third major tip is to answer anyone's questions if they ask them. But you also want to keep in mind, you don't want to spend all day talking with one person. Think of all the people you're missing who would have signed the initiative if you get into a long debate with people. So you want to make sure you answer people's questions completely and honestly. And if you don't know the answer, just go ahead and say that. Give them a petition. It has the entire text of the initiative on the back. So remember, if there's a question you don't know the answer to, don't be afraid to say, I don't know. Hi, are you a Washington voter?
Yes, I am.
Excellent. Well, take a look at this. My name's Eric, and I'm with the Yes on 1098 campaign. We're working to support education and healthcare today by taxing the super wealthy. You should sign our initiative to help us get on the ballot.
Okay. Well, what do you mean by super wealthy? What does that mean?
That's a great question. So our initiative is going to be imposing an income tax on the wealthiest 3% of Washingtonians, couples that make over $400,000 a year.
Oh, okay. I see it here. Okay.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your support.
Thanks.
So sometimes you're going to find people that ask a lot of questions. This is great. This is what democracy is all about. However, we're in the business of getting signatures right now. So if someone asks more than 3 questions, you should probably just hand them a copy of the petition, tell them to read it, and come back if they want to sign. So now we'll do a quick demonstration of what that looks like. Are you a Washington voter?
Yes, I am.
Excellent. Well, take a look at this. My name's Eric. I'm with the Yes on 1098 campaign. We're working to fund education and healthcare by taxing the super wealthy. You should sign our initiative.
Okay. Well, what do you mean by super wealthy? What does that mean?
That's a great question. So we're going to be imposing an income tax on the wealthiest 3% of Washingtonians, couples making more than $400,000 a year. So your signature today will go a long way to helping us get on the ballot.
Okay. I just have a couple other questions. You said funding healthcare and education. What exactly does that mean?
Absolutely. So this initiative is going to generate $1 billion in new revenue to be dedicated to education and healthcare on a 70-30 split.
Okay.
So that's going to help us reduce our class sizes and keep people on the basic healthcare plan.
Okay.
So your signature will really help us do that.
Okay. So doesn't this kind of open the door for a blanket income tax to everybody? I mean, I'm not really understanding how it's not eventually going to.
Sure, that's a great question as well. Well, let me give you this. So right on the back of the petition right here is the entire text of the initiative. Written into the initiative is a clause that says if the legislature wants to lower the threshold for the income tax, they have to go back to the people for another vote.
Oh, okay.
So take a look at that. If you want to sign, come back, and I'll be right here. You can sign the initiative if you agree.
Okay, great.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Fourth major tip is to try to recruit volunteers at the same time that you're gathering signatures. So you're going to run across some people who are super excited about this issue. We want to get them involved in the campaign gathering signatures as well. So if they express to you that they are very excited, give them one of your petition sheets and tell them to get their friends and family to sign it. Now we'll do a quick demonstration of that too. Hey, are you a Washington voter?
Yes, I am.
Excellent. Well, take a look at this.
Oh, is this 1098?
It absolutely is.
Oh, great. I've been looking for you.
Oh, that is so fantastic. Have you had a chance to sign already?
No, I have not.
Well, great. I can tell you're really excited about this issue.
Oh, I've been wanting this for a long time.
Oh, that is so great to hear. Well, you know what I'm going to do today? I'm going to send you home with a copy of the petition so you can get your friends and family to sign as well.
Oh, that's great. I'd definitely be able to fill one of those up for sure.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your support today.
When do I need them back by?
You got to return them by June 25th. We're going to verify the signatures and then turn them into the Secretary of State by July 2nd.
Great. Thanks for the work you do.
Second major way to gather signatures is with a table. Usually this works best for larger crowds. It's best to work in partners. And the way this works is we identify the two different types of people there are in the world. People who sign initiatives and people who don't. So one person's job is to kind of stand out in front of the table and ask people as they come by, hey, are you a Washington voter? Hey, are you a Washington voter? If they are, your job is to direct them straight to the table. Once they get over there, your partner behind the table is going to ask them to sign the initiative. It's important to set up your table in a friendly and inviting way. If you take a look, the best way to do it is to tape your petitions down, so you never lose them, and so that people have to come and kind of hunch over your petition to start to sign it. There's a lot of psychology about once someone is signing a petition, how many more people will come over and join them. So when someone's over here reading, signing, other people are going to come along and say, ooh, what's that person doing? I want to do that too. Are you a Washington voter?
I am.
Excellent. Well, come on over.
Help us fund education and healthcare and support small businesses. Sign Initiative 1098. This is Initiative 1098, but it's only to get it up on the ballot for ballot.
And it's to fund education and healthcare. And I live in Snohomish County, is it?
Yeah, it's a statewide initiative. Okay.
So those are the major techniques for gathering signatures. Remember, we only have 8 days until our June 25th deadline, so if you need more petitions or you need anything else, you can always email us at info@yeson1098.com or visit us on our website, www.yeson1098.com/volunteer. We really need your help to make sure we get the 241,000 valid signatures we need before submitting them to the Secretary of State on July 2nd. So thank you very much for all the work you're doing.
Isn't he great? He's so enthusiastic. So we have a couple of different ways of doing our campaign than he does. But one of the most important things is on the back of the petitions, who's gathering the signatures, you need to sign here, because otherwise whatever signatures you gather don't count. This is you verifying that you're a person who collected those signatures on the other side. So please be sure to do that. And we're probably not going to hand out petitions. If it looks like the person just wants to read the back of the petition and then they can feel comfortable and sign it, you can give it to them, but we're not just handing them out, because you could see there was nice color graphics on those petitions, and ours are black and white because we are really grassroots and we don't have lots of corporate money behind us. So, but what you can do for reduction from the website is you can get the wording of the back of the petitions and reduce that onto an 8.5 by 11 sheet that you can hand out. But we don't want to give the whole petition out because they did cost a chunk of money to get those printed. And I just wanted to let you know that where he was saying, hey, are you a registered Washington voter? That's not necessarily the best way to get somebody all excited about coming to find out about your petition. So we have signature gathering tips for you, but we're suggesting that you might say, hey, do you want to get big money out of politics? And somebody's going to be a lot more excited about that. And then once you start talking to them, you want to get them the petition and say, so you're a registered voter of Washington State, right? And that'll be really important if you help us gather signatures at places like Folklife or University Street Fair, where it might be people coming in from other areas, or if you go down to Pike Place Market or something. So I just wanted to let you know that we're not necessarily handing out petitions here, there, and everywhere, and to be sure to sign the back of it. And I wanted to let you know one other thing. Our group of dedicated volunteers, including Libby and Jay, who have been working on this for 4 years already, did a really super job trying to make sure that the language of the petition would be really clear and understandable. And right before they finalized the language, they did a sort of informal survey, and they found that a lot of people out there don't know what Citizens United is. And Citizens United, just those two words together, sounds really homey, like what we do here at the Common Good Cafe. Let's get together and have some conversations. So you have to be really careful if you're using that terminology. Really what you want to say is, would you like to get big money out of politics? And then you can have the further conversation and explain that, we're looking at a constitutional amendment that will have corporations not have natural human rights, and to have money not be free speech, so that we can be really clear with people about that. So I just wanted to make those little clarifications. Yep. Okay, that's a good tip. Thanks.
And it's good, is it not, Sil, to carry some voter registration forms with you, because sometimes you'll run into somebody who hasn't registered to vote here yet. Also, I don't know if you've been doing this or not, but you don't have to be a registered voter or 21 or 18 to be able to carry the petition. This is a great high school senior project. So if you know of people who feel passionately about this and want to carry the petition, this is something they could certainly do. Well, are there any further questions at this point? Okay. What I'd like to do is invite those of you who would like to get a kit and carry this word by, I encourage people to form teams of 2 or 3 people, get 2 or 3 friends together, and one kit, sit down and say, okay, we could speak to this group, that group, the other group, and then start your own little speakers bureau, where, again, you're not let the DVD clips deliver the speech, and your job is to guide the discussion and do the call to action, which is to sign the petition then and there, and or to carry a petition and to help be a part of this process. So come on over here if you want to get a kit and get plugged into this, or more petitions from Sil here. Yes. You can see the clips on all of the clips that we showed tonight are on the website, including Ashley Sanders' timelines, I called it on this. But yes, I would absolutely recommend that you look over and spend as much time as you can on the WAMN website. Go to the toolkit. It's got a drop-down window. There you'll find all the videos and a lot of other clips and interviews with people. You will be able to sign up on the Outreach tab. You can sign up to be a part of get into the WAMN database, so you start receiving the newsletter and the email blasts. You want to be sure and do that. And then the other thing I really recommend for more in-depth is movetoamend.org, all spelled out, movetoamend.org. is the national organization that now has approaching 200 affiliates across the country. And they really have given us a lot of leadership that we've taken a lot of cues from them. And they are the experts when it comes to the whole concept of this is about movement building for the long haul. They have that perspective. Thank you very much for coming, Reverend Rich. Thank you for hosting this. And I really would like to have you show the Ashley Sanders clip, because that's an hour. And this crowd, I'm sure, will come back. But watch it on WAMN, too. It's really, really excellent for background. Thank you so much. Thank you.